Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked here on the channel. This is the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves because I'm just in love that way. Today we are talking about Alice Oseman's Heartstopper series. I own books 1, 2, 3 and 4 in this series, which is why we're talking about it in this Overbooked session, but I'm going to only hold up book 1 because my arm strength isn't that strong yet. If you haven't already heard of Heartstopper, this is a British LGBTQ plus YA contemporary webcomic turned graphic novel. The original webcomic, I think, started in 2016, and then it was kick-started to be turned into a graphic novel print published version in 2018, but on the result of that Kickstarter was immediately picked up by Hodder, that's who is actually publishing it, along with a whole bunch of other stuff and Alice Oseman properties, and it has now eventually got to a point where we do have the Heartstopper TV series, which also exists. It is out on Netflix. I think if you haven't heard of Heartstopper yet, either you're a person who is mainly here for my adult sci-fi and fantasy reviews, in which case, sorry, we're taking a detour into YA contemporary for a week. In fact, quite a lot of the Overbooked Series 2 stuff has been YA adjacent, but that's fine. Alice Oseman, an awesome human being, like her very much. She is a British author. She's based, I think, near Norwich, or was near Norwich, maybe, perhaps. Uses she, her, and they, them pronouns, and also is aromantic and asexual. Not super relevant to this series in particular, but I think it's worth mentioning she is within the community and writing around things that affect her personally. The Heartstopper / Alice Oseman universe, I'm sure there is a term for it that the official fans use. I've only read or encountered or engaged with Heartstopper and Heartstopper content. I think I've read Nick and Charlie, possibly. It was during a time where I was a little bit burned out, so I don't quite remember if I bought it for a friend and didn't read it, or read it and then gave that copy to a friend. Not sure, truly cannot recall. But I've only encountered Heartstopper. There are oodles of other books that all fit within this same universe. This is the only thing I'm going to be talking about. We have Nick, and we have Charlie. They are two boys at a British secondary school, and they fall in love. Charlie is out as gay, Nick is not out as anything. Nick is a rugby guy, Charlie is more like a geeky music film kind of guy. And yeah, that's a very slow-paced love story. A lot of people will comment on the realism of it. I'll come on to that in a moment. Yeah, just a little YA contemporary romance webcomic for your delight and delectation. I said I was going to come on to it. We'll come on to it straight away. The idea of a very quote-unquote realistic romance. And I think this is somewhat in response to a lot of teen drama content that is being made, particularly for Netflix, which I think is why it's really interesting that Netflix picked up Heartstopper, that kind of really isn't what most people who have been teens have experienced, especially not in England. But I think in kind of response to a lot of the euphoria side of things, I'm trying to think of other good teen school examples, but I don't watch a lot of that content. But like my reference for it is Pretty Little Liars, which I appreciate as an old reference at this point, but that kind of teenagers aren't like this, life isn't like this, particularly with the fact that there isn't a lot of British content being made about British secondary schools. There is, it's things like Waterloo Road and so such, but I don't think that's in the general cultural reference, whereas Heartstopper very much is these days. To try to pick up on very specific British teen experience and also tell a romance that feels very realistically paced, that deals a lot with the importance of communication and talking about things. There's a lot of mental health overlap. I think what I like about it is it acknowledges that two people having a romance can be all-encompassing, right? It can be a thing that you can write a whole webcomic about, but it's not the only thing that goes on in their lives. Their love story is not the only thing happening, and the other things that happen in their lives will affect that romance and will affect how they're able to communicate. So there is a huge thread about mental health in this and how that can have an impact on a very new relationship. I would agree with the people who say this is a realistic romance. It's still a romance, it's still a fiction, it's still a book telling you a particular story, but I do think I get where it's coming from in terms of being in opposition without being in competition with other kind of teen fantasies, I suppose. I'm not an expert on art or anything of that kind. I really like the art style of Heartstopper. I really like looking at the pages. It's not similar to some other web comics or graphic novels that I've read where you really get into the kind of backgrounds of the art and so such. I think this is just a really nice easy on the eyes way of reading a graphic novel. If you are an art critic or art person, feel free to sound off in the comments below. It's not my particular expertise. However, I really like looking at this, and I think it's a huge selling point that you don't now, today, need to go out and buy a whole bunch of books. You can read the entire thing. In fact, beyond where the published books have got up to, you can read it all online for free. I will have a link down below to the tapas where you can just enjoy it on your own. It's great. In terms of the translation from webcomic to novel, I think it worked very well, having read both. Online, you get the guest comics, you get more of a sense of the passage of time as Alice Oseman was writing this thing and illustrating it and putting it up. And you do get some extras when you buy the books as well, so that's nice. There's something for everybody who's reading this in various different formats. Something about the week-to-week release of it as well, or at least originally the week-to-week. It's on hiatus at the moment. It's taken a fair few hiatuses. It's fine. But something about that progression, that release of kind of chunks at a time, makes the pace feel very measured, I think is probably the word I'm looking for. I think to say slow-paced sounds negative, but I think it is just that things arrive at the time where they feel like they should arrive. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel like it's trying to fit to a page count. It feels like it's trying to tell a story, which is very interesting. We gotta talk about the representation. We gotta talk about it. I'm in my late 20s and I'm very willing to accept I'm not the target audience for this media, right? My channel is mostly sci-fi fantasy, particularly adult sci-fi fantasy at this point. I do love Heartstopper and I think it's wonderful, and I think the reason I really connect with it is the representation I wish I had had when I was growing up. I was in school kind of the 2000s through the 2010s. You can do the maths. And we didn't really have that much. I think we had Glee. I really do think it was Glee that we had that was gay teenagers on television. At least that I was watching, or that was like in the things that my friends were watching. And we can accept Glee, not the best and most amazing representation. Heartstopper really feels like it is, to me at least, it really feels like it is representing a world in which queer people exist, LGBTQ people exist, all of the different letters, and without feeling like it's we've ticked the box, we've covered that one. And I've criticised LGBTQIA before for feeling like it's trying to give me an education and to teach me things, whereas I think Alice Oseman is trying to show people that they aren't alone in a really important way, rather than trying to educate. And the education does come, the education is there, but it's more from you going, what does that mean? I will go look that up on my own time because this book introduced me to it. So while I am not the target audience, I do think I'm a person who finds a lot of joy and cherishes this series very dearly. I'm kind of in the, what I would call usually my cons section of the video. I don't have a lot of cons of Heartstopper. It's kind of one of those things, if you don't like it, you won't like it, and it's not that complicated. I will say it's not a one-to-one to the TV show, particularly as we're getting into the later books and as the TV show moves into kind of the end of series 2, series 3. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they exist as different things. The first season of the TV show is very true to the books in a lot of ways. It adds in a lot for the background characters, which I appreciate. It's much more of an ensemble piece. But if you're wanting a one-to-one TV show to graphic novel, that's not what this is, just so you're aware. My last thing I'll mention is that this is not yet finished. You cannot get to read all the way to the end. Does that mean I will do a follow-up on this video? Probably not, because I think I've said everything I will want to say on the series. I can't imagine it changing that drastically as we move towards the end game. Alice Oseman is on hiatus, has been for a little while. Might be back by the time this video goes up, I don't know. I'm all for authors taking a hiatus. She has been churning out content for us for many, many years. It's totally fine. But just so you're aware, if you want to pick this up, you will not get to an end just yet. Soon, but not yet. It's time for comparisons, unless I delve into my brain to find the very few graphic novels I have ever read. I've read Lore Olympus, books 1 through 4. I really like Lore Olympus, not everyone does, but it's one of the other really big webcomics out there. The Prince and the Dressmaker I will be talking about in a few weeks for Overbooked. This, in fact, is probably a couple of months. This I really love. I think it's a great graphic novel. It's just lovely. I'm excited to talk about it. And Nimona is the other big webcomic I've read by Andy Stevenson. I will put a link to that video somewhere. It'll probably be in a little card. I don't read a lot of other YA contemporary. We will be talking about the Geekorella Once Upon a Fandom series in a few weeks. So I will touch on contemporary adjacent things then, but it's not something that I can particularly recommend. But if you have any recommendations, particularly of other Alice Oseman books, if you've read the full set, which ones do you recommend? Plug those down in the comments below. Overall, should you read Heartstopper? Like I said, if it's the kind of thing you're going to like, you will like it. If it's something that sounds not for you, i.e. you don't like YA contemporary, you don't like graphic novels, or you don't like heartwarming gay stories, it's not going to work for you, so probably don't read it. And that's where we're at. I'm pretty sure most people watching this will have already read it, is my guess. But you can let me know if I'm right down in the comments. Have you read this? Do you have plans to? Let me know. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord, where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams, and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. I am 20... Am I 29 at this point? Yes, I am. Thank you for that big sigh, Luna. You having a bit of a time? You comfy? The Prince and the Dressmaker, which I have next to me actually, so I can hold it up and save me putting the cover in.